All right, what is up? A little while ago, I made this APC guy as the third vehicle for the BMS armor pack, which, by the way, is finally now available in the link below that you'll find in the description. I recorded the whole process, and I think it took me about 8 or 9 hours to finish this thing. This was actually the first time that I got to play around with this kit, which is super, super fun. And also made me aware of possible weak spots in the kit too, which I'll talk about later. So without further ado, let's dive into it. All right, so funnily enough, the medium shape-esque large parts that I'm starting out with, these bigger hull shapes, are actually added as a last thing to the pack because I played around with it earlier, back before it was finished, and I noticed that I was really struggling to build bigger shapes out of the existing ones. And that's when I thought, okay, we just need some simpler shapes. And a good way to use these, by the way, these bigger shapes, is into a way where you're sort of using them to get a good grasp, a good clear grasp on the overall character that you want your vehicle or design to have. Because, obviously you can use these parts for set pieces as well. They're not just limited to vehicles, believe me. So yeah. What really was a good challenge is to sort of not also focus on the functional part of this vehicle right from the start, but also focus on the overall shape distribution. It's still concept design. You still want to make sure that the vehicle somewhat looks pleasing. What that often means, by the way, is just applying the law of unequal measures. So make sure you don't divide things in half. Make sure that that you utilize different shape sizes for as many things as possible, which can give you this very organic result. So yeah, dive into that. It's called the big, medium, small principle. Go figure. Somebody made a remark on the placement of the turret, it being a functional advantage, because you divide the entrance of the troops from the fighting part of the vehicle, if I understand it correctly. And I thought, yeah, that's totally what I did that for. It's not at all, because I was just focusing on the big, medium, small principle and sort of not try to divide things in half. So yeah. The overall idea I have with this vehicle is to sort of get I would say, a aggressive, solid stance. That's why I moved the turret forward to that extent, and it also helps, like if you're designing anything really, but it especially applies to vehicles. I think is that you have clear areas for different functions within the vehicle, because I thought, okay, the engine will be somewhere in the back. So I clearly divided that, as for me not having to figure a way out how to get air vents mix up with the turret, for instance. So as you'll see later, the big spot in the back was reserved because I already kind of knew that the engine would be in the back. So I wanted to have some air grates that would not be interfering with the turret, or if that makes sense, So that can really help, because there's a lot going on with a vehicle usually. Well, obviously, spending some time on getting the big underbelly that you have with these large angle of approach vehicles. I think I was kind of in like a Star Wars mood, because I wanted to get like that Millennium Falcon feel where you have those circular air grates in the back. And I end up actually changing that to get a little bit more shape variation and a little bit more groundedness in it. Which is something, by the way, that you can really see me applying here, which is a principle you can apply as well when you're using this pack. Is basically where you try to decide if you want to lean more into generalism or you want to lean more into iconicism. Both of them can be very handy. Generalism will sort of be that you're designing an object that's supposed to blend in as much as possible, which is sort of what this vehicle does. You sort of create the illusion of mechanical complexity. There's lots of variation. There's lots of different placements. There's a lack of a pattern, which is how a lot of these vehicles look like in real life, because they're sort of like just placed in logical ways, not in aesthetic ways. Let's say you wanted to lean more into the iconicism part. What you would basically do is you would reduce the amount of different elements, and you would start working with one clear visual graphic message, which could be like, let's say you would design a piece of armor that has like some pointy hooks sticking out, which give like this reptilian vibe, right? You would sort of go out of your way to repeat that as much as possible in a visually exciting way, and you would reduce elements that do not contribute to that reptile vibe. And you could sort of dance along that line to sort of get like a blend of both. If you lean into iconicism pretty much all the way, you also get like some sort of abstract vehicles, which you will see in movies like Dune, for instance. Something like this would never work in Dune. Like it's too grounded, right? And so what a lot of vehicles do in that universe is they basically follow like that iconicism rule. Well, it's not a rule. I can make stuff up if I want. It's just something that I recognize. I don't know like how much of a real principle that is. As you can see, like it actually took me some time as well to sort of find parts in this arrangement, because this was actually not my arrangement, and this is not the final arrangement either. Arrangements of parts, I mean. So I was actually struggling, because I know oftentimes I knew like which part I needed, but I couldn't find it. So yeah. Also trying to apply the same big, medium, small principle, the law of unequal proportions or measures, to smaller pieces within the design. So you try to always check like, okay, I'm adding this bottom rim. I'm just going to try to make sure that it doesn't have the same thickness as some of the upper parts. Same goes with like this bar. Okay, like make sure that the distribution in terms of width sort of work within the whole. This part, I don't know why, but I like it. It works for me as like this general cover part. So and I end up using it, I think, a couple of times within this vehicle, and I think it still works. Yeah, a blender crashed on me. Yeah, that happens sometimes. I need more antennas. That's something I realize now, which is something I'm actually working on in the background too, working on a update for the pack. We need more antenna variations. Like when in doubt, add bars. That's like military vehicles, guys. When in doubt, add bars. That's it. And it crashed on me once again. Which was actually solved after just rebooting my computer. Like I didn't know what was up. And then I like sort of figured out maybe I should just reboot my computer. Yeah. So yeah. And once you have those major shapes blocked out, you can sort of add like little elements to it that sort of add an idea of a story to it. So I think there's a lot of overlap between storytelling in terms of shot design as there is in terms of storytelling for mechanical design, because you're sort of, if you're designing a gun, you're telling the story of like, this is the ammo, and this is where the ammo gets fed into the gun, and this is where you pull the trigger, and this is where You know what I mean? It's you sort of try to build visual storytelling clarity in mechanical design as well, and I think that's also why it kind of works to make clear areas for in this case for the turret and for the engine and for when you have the top turret, that there's like a clear area where the gun is resided. There's like clear boundaries happening within the design, which will help you to amplify storytelling elements. And once again, don't be afraid to skew things. Don't worry about it. Unless like there's like a super obvious circle going on and then you're squishing the circle. Not saying never do that, but generally speaking, it doesn't really work. I also want to do a ton of extra gun variations because when I was doing this, that's when I realized like, okay, that's fairly doable with the parts that are in this kit. Like you could come up with quick gun shape designs and turrets relatively quickly, I think. That's another part, by the way, that rectangle frame that I use a lot because I don't know. I have the idea that it sort of lends itself pretty nicely to getting like a base frame for something, like a believable base frame that has some visual complexity to it, but not too much. Also, something I already want to touch on is basically like right now you have the driver's hatch in the front, which is way too far in the front to fit a driver in. But also it sort of breaks that clear boundaries for different functions within the vehicle kind of rule that I want to apply, because you have the I would say like a luggage or gear rack in the front, and it's sort of intersecting with that hatch, and you're sort of both screaming for attention. So after a while you'll see me moving that hatch backwards, and to make sure that there's like this designated part for that gear rack in the front, so that they're not sort of competing for the same amount of attention, and sort of to try and re-amplify that whole idea of having clear zones for the functions in your vehicle. You gotta have smoke grenade launchers, by the way. Come on. Adding like this little motor to the slewing unit of the turret. That's all part of what I mean with having like visual storytelling. So like it's a thing that rotates, and this is the engine that makes it rotate. You're trying to just be very, very clear in what something does. And also, like whenever you have this handle, right? Like this double machine gun handle. And it will take me a lot of time to sort of figure out how exactly that attaches to the machine gun. So what you can always do is just add like this little cover-up plate on top of it that sort of blocks viewing how that thing is connected to the other part. And that works like in, I would say, 80% of the cases. So if you need a quick fix, just add a plate on top, guys. Just do that. Just cover it up. And let's say eight chances out of 10 that will fix your problem. I promise. There's like a few parts that I tend to lean into first, which I think is pretty natural in a way. So I'm actually curious, guys. Like, if you're working with this kit, and you're what type of parts do you tend to rely on the most? Let me know in the comments, guys. That would be really, really cool for me to sort of get some insight into that and to see like how this pack can expand. Because this is just the beginning, guys. It's like we finished it. Well, I finished my part, and then the BMS guys finished their part, and then like at one point I was like, so this is it, and then I was like, holy shit, this is not it at all. Like this is just the start. Like there's an insane amount of potential, I think, in terms of how to expand it. So I'm really, really excited actually to touch upon that. I also got a lot of remarks from like people who actually properly know military vehicles that the side door idea was something that was quickly abandoned in the Cold War era because of safety issues. So yeah, I mean, but I also kind of feel flattered that like actually military vehicle guys are judging the design. You know what I mean? That means that it has a sufficient amount of realism to it to trigger people. You know that yeah, I kind of like that idea. So I don't mind it. I don't mind either. Like break it down, guys. Like if anybody has some good remarks on how I'm breaking the military vehicle laws, let me know. I like this kind of stuff, you know, because oftentimes there's like this really clear functional restriction behind something, and it's cool to know. Yeah. Also, scaling down some parts because I felt like they were kind of breaking scale. This is very tricky too. Like there's obviously there are a few things that will be standardized in terms of size, but very often it's more or less like a how does it feel. Uh, but what I do notice, like if you guys want to know, what I do notice with a lot of people, including me, is that we often tend to make parts like bolts, bars, these kind of loopy things that stick out that we tend to make them too big. So ask yourself, if you're adding these terms of details, like does it make sense to scale them smaller? And just make sure that you have human scale in there as well, always at all times, because we are so incredibly sensitive to things that are made to human scale. There's just no way around it. Same goes for these handles. And don't be afraid either to add repetition to your vehicles. Like it's a win-win situation. Like it eases the amount of visual computation power somebody's brain needs to process the design you're looking at, and it also minimizes your need to make super conscious decisions about every single detail part. Detail part. Adding more luggage racks, obviously. And I think this is also the point where I started to slowly realize that these circles weren't doing it. Like I need to work with the design and not be stubborn about like my own preferences. Like sometimes stuff just doesn't work, even though like you have a momentarily excited feeling about the Millennium Falcon vibe. It's just like let it go, man. Like if it doesn't work, it does not work. By the way, the frame underneath that luggage rack is a variation on the luggage rack that I use in the front with the one that I said that I tend to use a lot. So you can see that I have clear preferences, And also, don't be afraid to start to keep editing base meshes to fit your needs. You know what I mean? Like it's not because you had it in the block out that it needs to stay. If something needs editing, just do it. because you'll see me add a spare wheel in just a second. And that sort of danced around the entire vehicle because I couldn't really find a place to put it. I had like a few contenders, but I ended up placing it in the back, so that back hatch will go, and the spare wheel will go to the back. And then even guys like try to do visual storytelling on all of these parts. I just used the ready available suspension for this one because you can't really see it. Like you'll get some hints from it, but if let's say if you would do like a dune buggy and then everything was exposed, yeah, probably I would design a new suspension, which you can. There's plenty of parts to go around with that. And I actually want to do one of those, like a very agile dune buggy type of thing. I did a few rough ones a while ago, which kind of never really went anywhere, but I might pick those back up. So like adding like a few lights to sort of get an idea of the shadow distribution from different light angles. And also, actually, because I sometimes like I kind of need that little bit of variation. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Just checking multiple light directions. Adding brackety things. I think it's kind of funny that like my Wacom menu was on all the time. I get into this like this super hyper focus state of mind when I'm doing this type of things, where it's just the only thing that's existing is this, and whenever I get a phone call, I go like, huh. And I go both ways, like either way, I have complete and utter silence, or I just have like the most loud, blaring music going on. Like I don't do very well, or like I can watch like some documentary or something in the background, but like just listening to normal music is not in my pack. Don't know why. Again, like visual storytelling. Okay, you have this light. How is it connected? Do you like have a screw, or do you have like this nice part that you can sort of just fasten and loosen by hand? And it adds like this little interest point. It's like a little side story. Yeah, there you go, by the way. Like the hatch has moved backwards, which opens up a bit more vertical space for the driver. Kind of thinking about building like a new hinge part, having like this locking mechanism. Like sometimes I get the super accurate mathematical distribution with like a radial array, and sometimes I just eyeball parts. Like do you guys know there's no actual law for that? There's like no actual rule that says that you need to have everything mathematically correct when you're doing concept design. Like if it looks all right, it's good, which can really speed up things too. Not always, but there you go. Like once again, the same parts. You know what I mean? You've got that top part with the circular holes in it, and then you have that bottom frame part. What I realized at this point is like, holy shit, that wheel is gigantic. You can't just put that anywhere. It's not like you can hardly put it anywhere. Like in the front, it obstructs the turret. In the back, it covers the engine. I kind of like this upper side placement in the back that I have right now. I don't know, like I ended up changing it. And I think a strong suit of this pack, or that I at least try to evaluate as objectively as possible, is what I think is a good strength of this pack, is that it kind of allows you to make these relatively complex mechanical surface parts, like the one you see in the back with those springs, relatively quickly. Like you can come up with quite some interesting parts to cover a design in a pretty quick manner, which is something I really like because it adds a lot of visual complexity, like, and in the end that complexity sort of strengthens the illusion for the viewer that they're looking at a computer simulated vehicle. So like as long as you can maintain that, the longer you can maintain the illusion, the better. The more your viewer will be engaged. And it's all about layering too, guys. Like the mechanical design for me oftentimes is so much about layering and like getting like these little areas where you get the idea that you're seeing through deeper into the design. Not everywhere. You kind of you want to tease the audience. You don't want to show anything everything. Plus also if you want to show everything, that's just a lot of work, which is something you usually don't get when you're doing concept design. Sometimes you do. Depends on the type of job. Yeah. Eyeballing, which is fine because for this it's fine. And the actual layout of the pack is a lot easier to work with than this was. God damn it! I lost so much time just looking for things. But at the same time, this also helped me to see different potential in parts that I was used to seeing in other assemblies. If that makes sense, like this allowed me to view a lot of parts with a fresh eye. So I'm also really, really grateful to being able, to work with this, because these guys also they dissected everything, like to 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 the last bolt. Trying to build like a little sensory thing, Also, don't be afraid to fill, like if you have this cover plate and you want to have the impression that there's something underneath, just fill it with a big shape first, so that you don't have like that awkward see-through effect and you're trying to detail everything inside of it too. Just fill it up first and then see like if you need anything extra to it, because I ended up adding nothing inside, and it still feels, I think it feels complex enough to hold up this vehicle. Yeah, this was way too brittle to have as like a first contact point plate. And obviously, I had to check, right? I had to check if if it was a cool idea to have like this teethy thing in there. But that adds like a very iconic part to it. That's what I mean with the iconicism. So I ended up deleting it. Oh, and the snap to surface thing was not set up at that point, so I like to noodle sometimes. It's like it feels like I'm doing something by hand. I have like these random pauses Because I remember back in the day when I was recording this that I thought like nobody would notice in the time lapse, but you totally notice in the time lapse. So like could just be me like getting some water or something. I don't know. I am super curious to what you guys will come up with in this pack. You know, because that's the thing. Like I created the parts, but it's also like I'm using the parts as well. And even though like I sometimes feel like I have this liberated view on the pack right now because the parts are in a different arrangement, you like any other person will use this in a different way, and I'm super curious as to what these ways will be. Just playing around with the camo too. Whenever I do stuff like that, that means like my brain needs a break and I'm just playing around basically. Another cover up moment too, by the way. Once again, when in doubt, add bars. And this is when I realized, like, yeah, I can't use the same spring over and over again in the same design. Like, I need to cover it up. See, when in doubt, it's like when in doubt, add bars or cover it up. Ah, yeah, the winch. I realized I didn't have a winch, like none whatsoever, and you definitely need a winch in like this military vehicle pack. So I thought like let's just start out with one right now, and then you can always add stuff on top of it later or build a new one. But we at least needed one winch, which was very fun to treat as like this little side project. You know, I think it took me about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. Which is something I would like to do as an exercise as well at some point where I would go like, okay, I've got a spare day, you know, like 8 hours of work. Let's just build as many guns as possible in a day. And then just roll with whatever that brings me. Also trying to like really work with parts like, because that top brighter part where the hook will be, that was I think a muzzle brake that I ended up not using for the anti-air gun vehicle, but it kind of fits in there. So, woo. There goes the winch. Pretty happy with it. It also adds like that fine element of scale in there, you know, because you have that cable wire. And I think that kind of worked, you know, to sort of set like the smallest scale item of the front part at least. So what I'm basically doing right now, I was fairly happy with the type of elements that you could see in the vehicle, but I thought they were just like a little bit too randomly distributed, so I sort of bundled them. You know, you have those back parts with the perforated, like the square blocks with the springs underneath, and then I sort of try to group that little circular hatch on the side with it instead of having that to be randomly on the front somewhere. And I think it also helps to emphasize like that the mechanical complexity of this design is in the back. You know, that's where the engine is. So like it might be some type of service hatches for the engine. Who knows? Who knows? It's not important what it is. It should sort of like just work. And plus also like there's a lot of complexity in the turret. So then the hull part underneath is relatively calm. So that hopefully adds like a bit of visual contrast to it. Just repeating parts. Sometimes this can be pretty tedious. But hopefully over time, like I'll complete some combinations of like these surface parts that you could just, like a few surface part collections that you can just add and snap to a flat surface. Rip, rip. Should add sound effects to it, you know. Scale down that circular part too, because you were making so awkward intersections with the sloping parts of the main hull. Adding some lights. And of course having the license plate in there. Unlike the protective frames, which you'll see around lights in military vehicles a lot, which can add like this nice extra layer of complexity on a part. Like just trying to balance out. That's basically what I'm doing right now. It's pretty much finished, but I'm just trying to balance things out a little bit now. That's why that detail group on that side gets like another smaller detail, you know, because like the antenna, the smoke grenade launchers, and then that crate thing on the side, they sort of form one group, and I'm trying to make that group feel as balanced as possible. Not only the placement of it against the rest of the turret, but also like what the size differences are of and the shape differences in those different parts. So it's like kind of trying to group it, and all once again, like when in doubt, covered up. There was some awkward stuff. Like I couldn't figure out how to attach it to the top, like that back crate thingy, and I thought like let's just cover it up, which I think adds like a little layer of like a little bit more extra layering, and also like some areas of rest, and you kind of get the idea that something else is going on beneath it. Once again, same parts. And the same goes for this one, you know. And then just working with the spare wheel. And I actually struggled with it a little bit to sort of get like the right look and feel on it. Because I kind of like this iron band thing. But I don't know, it felt a little bit too flimsy for me to, like, I can imagine that wheel's super heavy. And when you just have like these thin, I don't know. And I thought it could be cool to have like a release clip on it. And there I go. At some point, I introduced the same springs once again. And I'm like, okay, no. Not on this one, okay? Like, this guy wanted to come over and watch. He's like, oh, what are you doing? Sloop? No, obviously just checking scale. And I think I end up deleting pretty much everything off that spare wheel, except for the wheel, and then starting over with a few new parts. So also that's another thing that you really have to accept when you're doing this type of stuff. It's like sometimes, you're just gonna end up deleting a chunk of work, and you'll feel the entire time that it's not working, but you just like kind of like trying to make it work, only to like keep deleting things, and at some point you just gotta accept it like that it's not working. See, like I'm moving it around, and then I think like, okay, the back, there's just no space. You know what I mean? Like, just see how big that is, and on the top, Jesus, just no way for me to properly place that anywhere else. And imagine getting that wheel down from there. You know what I mean? It's like, shit, we have a flat tire again. So I ended up just deleting that, picking a more logical place, and I'm building like a quick frame around it. So yeah, sometimes that happens, like that you sort of lose track on track. Also, just like a last thing that I wanted to quickly check out, because I like these guys, but I've never used them, because I built them for the first vehicle that I was gonna build for this pack, but it sort of went to shit, which I'll talk about in another video someday, but not now. And just layering. Like at this point, the vehicle is like it's pretty much done. I'm just layering things. Plus, I'm also like in a mood where I just want to play around with it, because it's so quick to try out things when you have all of these parts ready, that it hardly takes you any time to just check some things out. See, like a simple. Eventually, like the wheel got a very simple solution, which is also a lesson that I'm still learning. Is like, you want mechanical complexity, but that does not mean that every part should be super complex. Sometimes it's more about the arrangement of many simple parts that will create that complexity. But like these parts in itself are super simple, or the design of it at least. Yeah. Now I was like, yeah, kind of works. I don't know. Like I really enjoyed this process. It was I had a lot of room for exploration because things go quick. You can quickly evaluate things that you're trying out. And eventually, like, you can still come to the conclusion that you need to hand model something, but at least like you already laid out the groundworks of things that work and things that don't work, which will take you ages if you want to model that all yourself, or like if you want to model it on the fly. This is just experimenting. Just working with what's already there. I don't think I will. Yeah, this is pretty much it. So Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, guys. I kind of got surprised by the end of that time lapse. But yeah, a few things that I think I learned making this guy is one, even though you're doing like this, like a fairly grounded design, your first and foremost attention should always go to the overall character of the vehicle. And I think that is especially the case when you're doing grounded design work, because we're still in the realm of concept design, which still kind of means that the first thing your viewer will connect to is not like how that light is connected to the hull or all of these sidebars. It's the overall character that will draw the viewer in. And you only have like a fraction of a second to get the attention. So character first. Second, it's really good to have all of these functional details, to create the illusion of looking at a real life thing. But in doing so, we really need to keep attention on grouping these kind of details so that we still have some areas of rest, even though that might not be the case with a real world vehicle. Once again, think about the concept design side of things. And I think last is just sort of, for me, the confirmation I needed on the whole idea of having like these designated zones for functionality in your vehicle. Like there's a clear engine part, there's a clear turret part, there's a clear driver part, there's clear cargo parts, or gear racks, or whatever you want to call them. So I think this probably won't work for absolutely everything. But I think in general that this whole idea of having those clear defined zones will dramatically help you in solving your design. So yeah. Oh, there's nothing inside the turret. Just ignore that. You can just shove a guy right in there. Or what you could do, like build an interior. I'm pretty sure you guys can come up with something. So this pack is now available at the link in the description down below. You can use the code ARMOR with a capital A on Gumroad right before your purchase to get 30% off now. If you want to see more behind the scenes stuff, make sure to follow me on Instagram. And if you really want to go all out, support me on Patreon on my descent into mechanical madness. So I'll see you next time, guys. Cheers.